He waved his hand, too lazy to entangle with Ling Xuan again. Ling Xuan couldn't help but shake his head. The lower layer became like this, and the upper layer of Qingxuanmen didn't care about it. Or is it that the entire Qingxuanmen is rotten? Ling Xuan glanced at his life panel. This person's potential has come to an end, and he can only enter the foundation building realm after 3 years, and he will be a small foundation building realm for the rest of his life. However, this person has a good chance recently. Recent chance. 3 days later, I went out to Qingxuan City to look for flowers and ask Willow, and on the way I encountered a golden rat, but I couldn't catch up. And I only found 3 lower spirit stones. The gold hunting rat is a demon beast that especially likes to shine with treasures, especially spirit stones. Its attack power is not strong, but it runs exceptionally fast. If there was no special bait, even the peak cultivators of the condensing chi realm would not be able to catch up with it. Quote. Ling Xuan noted down this opportunity. Decoys are not difficult to make, but they need to be prepared in advance. 3 days later, he rushed to that place with the bait, and he would definitely be able to catch the gold hunting rat and take down all the spirit stones he was carrying. He strode forward, walking among the many bookshelves. On the first floor of the Tibetan scripture pavilion, all are the exercises and martial arts of the Yellow Order. On the second floor, there are Xuanjian exercises and martial arts, but they must reach the inner disciples to go upstairs. The reason why it is arranged this way is because the martial arts of the Xuanjian order are rare and precious. Qingxuanmen is already the largest force in 100 miles, but there are only 3 Xuan step exercises and 8 Xuan step martial arts. Texts of this grade naturally had to be supplied to the top genius disciples. Outer disciples are naturally out of reach. Ling Xuan moved forward slowly, his gaze quickly moving among the many exercises and martial arts, looking at them one by one, not daring to leave any of them behind. After a few moments, he found his goal. Yellow step lower grade martial arts, tiger raw fist. He picked up this seemingly ordinary fist technique and looked at it carefully. He noticed that the cover of the book was thicker than the average book cover. If you don't pick it up and look at it carefully, no one will notice this. Ling Xuan pressed hard, and sure enough, he found that there was a cat greasy under the heavy cover. He reached out and pulled out 2 yellowed pages from the cover. The pages of the book are densely packed with small words. At the top, there are 4 words, Thunder Shadow Sword Reform. Ling Xuan was slightly surprised. He had heard of this Thunder Shadow Sword technique. This is one of the 8 Xuan step martial arts at the bottom of the Qingxuanmen box, which is very powerful and extremely fast, and the grade has reached the middle grade of the Xuanjian. It's just that cultivation is very difficult, so there are very few people among the inner disciples who practice. This seems to be a new sword technique written down by a certain big guy after innovating the Thunder Shadow Sword. Ling Xuan's heart was excited, and he immediately took it into his arms. No matter what, this is a Xuan rank martial art. Even a slight achievement is enough to raise your strength by a lot. Ling Xuan put the tiger roaring fist back in its place, turned around and walked out of the hidden scripture pavilion. However, as soon as he walked out of the Tibetan scripture pavilion, he bumped into Lei Yong, who had just walked in. Lei Yong saw him and frowned slightly. Why are you here? Ling Xuan didn't expect such a coincidence, and he just came out and met. However, he did not show the slightest panic, but calmly responded, many of my martial arts are abandoned, come to the hidden scripture pavilion to look at it again, can't you? Lei Yongwei laughed. Of course. If he were at the foot of the mountain, Ling Xuan would dare to speak to him in this tone, and he would punch him on the spot. But this is the mountainside, people come and go, inner disciples, outer disciples. If he directly made a move on Ling Xuan, it would not affect well. Ling Xuan continued to move forward. Wait, Lei Yong swept away, and suddenly saw Ling Xuan's chest that was a little bulging. You have a bit of a drum in front of you, what's hidden on your body? Lei Yong seemed to smile and grabbed Ling Xuan's clothes. That look seemed to say, if you don't let me see it, I'll do it myself. I want to take the task, I want to earn spirit stones, I will be hungry when I do things, and I have a few steamed buns on my body, why, can't it? Ling Xuan pulled his front blanket away, took out a steamed bun and shook it in front of his eyes. Lei Yongpi smiled and said, okay, of course. He withdrew his hand and said no more, don't forget the rules, you take on your own tasks, and I will be paid 1 out of 10. Quote. Ling Xuan didn't say a word, quickened his pace with a cold face, and quickly left. Lei Yong snorted coldly and stepped into the hidden scripture pavilion. The deacon of the Tibetan scripture pavilion at the door recognized Lei Yong and immediately greeted him attentively. Although he is a cultivator of the qi condensation realm, he is in his 40s and his potential is exhausted. And Lei Yong is only 18 or 9 years old. As long as he grows up normally, his future achievements will definitely be above him. Not to mention that Lei Yong is still a disciple of the family, and there is a cousin who is an inner disciple. He is very enthusiastic about Lei Yong. Lei Yong nodded to him and walked between the bookshelves. His gaze roamed through a book of exercises and martial arts. But he never found a martial art that suited him. But at some point, he suddenly stopped. The gaze rests on a martial art called Tiger Roaring Fist. Hey, the cover of this book is weird. Lei Yong picked up the Tiger Roar Fist and immediately felt that something might be hidden in the cover. But after he pressed, he found that it was empty. Che, it turned out to be my delusion. Lei Yong put down the Tiger Roaring Fist and wasted no more time. However, for some reason, he suddenly felt a sense of loss. It seems that something that should have been acquired, but inexplicably lost. Chapter 4. The first layer of the Thunder Shadow Sword Technique, Lei Yong's death period. The other side. Ling Xuan left the Tibetan scripture pavilion and immediately returned to the outer disciple courtyard at the foot of the mountain and returned to his residence. As soon as he returned, he closed the door tightly, took out the 2 pages from his arms, and began to understand it seriously. It took him 2 hours to read it through. After reading it, Ling Xuan looked emotion. This person's transformation of the Thunder Shadow Sword is very peculiar. On the one hand, it has increased its power and speed, but on the other hand, it has also increased the difficulty of cultivation. Quote, however, I can always think of ways to speed up my cultivation by constantly plundering the opportunities of others. Practice now. Ling Xuan put away the sword technique, picked up the iron sword, and began to practice one by one. Under such serious cultivation, half a month passed. A bamboo forest at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, there was a sound of breaking the sky. From a distance, you can see a young man dancing his iron sword like a mad snake. Fast as thunder, deadly as a snake. A moment later, the youth collected his sword. On the ground, there were more than a dozen bamboo leaves that were split in 2. The young man sweated profusely, but laughed with satisfaction. The first layer of the Thunder Shadow Sword method is really strong, and the move is fatal. But the physical strength consumed is too great. Quote, fortunately, I have already reached the great cultivation realm, otherwise I will be exhausted when I use a sword. The young man was none other than Ling Xuan. There are only 3 layers of the Thunder Shadow Sword technique. Many inner disciples and elders also practiced the Thunder Shadow Sword technique, but they only comprehended the 2nd layer, so they stuck here and did not move. Very few people can comprehend the 3rd level. The reason why Ling Xuan was able to increase his strength so quickly in half a month, and he could also comprehend the Thunder Shadow Sword method to the 2nd layer, was the credit of chance. Before, he cut off the opportunity of the deacon of the Tibetan scripture pavilion, used the bait to catch the gold-seeking rat, and obtained more than 20 lower-grade spirit stones. He used these spirit stones to purchase 2 forging body pills in the treasure pavilion. Subsequently, during this half-month, he cut off 2 more opportunities on Lei Yong.